Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and I have a pair of Meze 109 Pros in for review. Of course, this is kind of an older release. I think it's been out for about 2 years now, and it seems to have been pretty well received within the community among a pretty broad spectrum of listeners, from those who are more measurement-oriented to those who are simply looking for a purely musical experience. And I think I kind of land right in the middle. So of course, we'll talk about the tangible as far as what's included in the box, the design, specifications, and then we will do a sound breakdown. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So this is everything that you get in the box. We've got the headphones. They've also included a 3.5 millimeter cable, which is roughly 4.5 feet long. And then I also received the same cable, but it's a much longer cable. And that cable is about 10 feet in length. And then of course, they've also included this very nice protective carrying case, a soft pouch to store the cable in, and then a headphone adapter. But before we go any further, I want to stop and say thank you to Meze Audio for providing a 20% off discount code exclusively for the Gazaudio community. And that's a savings of $159 on the 109 Pro. Just make sure and look at the description for both the link to the 109 Pro and also the discount code. And of course, the discount will be applied at checkout. Now, as I've come to expect with Meze Audio, the build and design of the 109 Pro is exceptional. The design does remind me a little bit of the 99 Classics. However, the 109 Pro is clearly a very big step up, not only in terms of the design, but also just its overall build quality and comfort level. Now, speaking of comfort, the included ear pads are extremely soft. And because of the way they've combined the headband with this elastic type of approach, it really does make for a very, very comfortable fit. And then going back to the design, I absolutely love the simplicity of the design. The rose gold hardware combined with the walnut looks absolutely stunning. And they've even gone so far as to carry that rose gold color through to this beautifully designed driver grille. And speaking of the driver, this is a custom designed 50 millimeter dynamic driver that uses a combination, I guess, of biocellulose on the inside of the driver and then a beryllium coating on the outside portion of the driver. And this set doesn't really require much in terms of power either. They have a sensitivity of 112 dBs and then an impedance of 40 ohms. So while you should be able to reach good volume levels even with a lower power device like a dongle, I would still recommend giving them a little more power if you have it, as the 109 Pros will scale nicely. And I did notice a pretty significant improvement in sound quality as I moved up to some of my higher power, higher end amplifiers. Now, as far as the cable, it's perfectly adequate for this price point. The build quality and construction are good, but it does look kind of simple, and the jacketing is basically just a black rubbery material. But again, still what I would consider to be good for this price point. The included protective carrying case is also very nice. The design is a little simple, but the build quality is really, really good. It's a hard case, but they've also added a very soft lining on the inside to protect the finish of the headphones. And then one last finishing touch is the addition of this seamless zipper here. All in all, though, in terms of build quality, design, material use, accessories, I would consider this to be excellent for this $800 price point. But of course, the real question is, how does it sound? Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. So the 109 Pro does take kind of a unique approach to its tuning, but as I had mentioned in my opening, it does still seem to appeal to a pretty broad spectrum of listeners. And despite its slightly different tuning approach, I do still think it falls within the realm of neutral with some extra energy in the treble. So a little brightness on the top end, but it also does have some bass energy as well. Now, again, I would still consider this to be more of a neutral set, but it's also kind of pushing into that fun and engaging territory because it's certainly not a boring set by any means. As a matter of fact, its treble is even what I would describe as almost aggressive. But when I step back and I look at the presentation on the whole, it does still stay relatively balanced, but the mid, bass, and treble were the two most notable parts of its tuning. That's what stood out to me the most, with the treble being highlighted maybe just a little bit more. But if we break things down a little further, starting with the bass, in terms of bass quantity, it does, again, it stays within the realm of neutral in my opinion, but because its presentation is more mid-bass focused, my attention tends to be drawn to kick drums and bass plucks or anything that has a sense of punch or impact to it. And I should also point out that this driver handles dynamics and slam very, very well. And even though, again, the focus is on the mid-bass frequency, it does roll off very gently and it still provides nice amounts of sub-bass extension. So it's going to give me a nice amount of low end rumble, but there's just, again, a little more energy focused around the mid-bass. And as far as bass speed, these drivers are very fast. And while this isn't necessarily the most articulate bass I've heard, it is certainly among the best that I've heard within this price range under $1,000. And I would even say that applies to the bass quality in general. It's simply excellent at this price point. But it's in the mid-range where things really started to impress me. And this is without question probably my favorite aspect of the tuning of the 109 Pro. And generally the mid-range is just what I would consider to be linear, but there is a small recess right before the ear gain, similar to what Sennheiser did with the HD 800S. And that recess is then followed by a pretty quick rise into the ear gain. And the reason I say the mid-range is my favorite part of the tuning is because the 109 Pros simply reproduce instruments and vocals absolutely beautifully. And for those of you who are familiar with my reviews, you'll know how important that is, how important instrument and vocal naturalness is to me. And the 109 Pro does that very well, in my opinion. There isn't anything that sounds off or incorrect. Vocals simply sound as they should, or as at least as my brain expects them to sound. And in addition, it also allows vocals or lead instruments to be the center of attention and keep the listener's focus, but without ever becoming shouty or being overly forward in the mix. But beyond that, it's just providing good mid-range clarity. Now, in regards to the treble response, there is a pretty broad spectrum of opinions ranging from it's a little aggressive to it's perfect. And of course, this is a preference thing and it's also an age thing. But for me, while it is clear to me that it does have some coloration going on, it's not too aggressive, at least not for my ears. It is, however, what I would consider to be maybe at the top end of my preference in terms of treble energy. Now, I must admit, I've watched a lot of reviews on this headphone, well, because like I said, I've had my eye on it and it's been out for nearly 2 years. And I have to say, I have to agree with DMS's assessment that its treble tuning or even its overall tuning does benefit from being paired with an amplifier or DAC that has a smoother presentation like the K9 Pro here. And since it requires very little power when I'm on the go, I also find myself really enjoying this when paired with my FC6, which is still one of my absolute favorite dongles. And of course, that uses R2R technology. Point being, if you are treble sensitive, there are ways to maybe tame that extra energy. And that extra treble presence carries through into the upper treble as well, which of course is going to bring a nice sense of openness and airiness to its presentation. Speaking of openness, the Soundstage of the 109 Pro is impressive to say the least. And while it's maybe not going to necessarily be able to compete with my Aria Stealths or HD 800S, it's still exceptional, especially considering it's only $800. Equally impressive is its imaging capabilities. Of course, one of my favorite tracks that I use for testing Soundstage and imaging is Annabelle by Meze Gray, and the 109 Pro absolutely does that track justice. Its positional cues are very, very good. Instruments and vocals are very focused. They have good density, they've got good separation, and they also sound anchored or grounded, so nothing sounds like it's just floating in its space or as though it's drifting. Now, as far as value and where I feel the 109 Pro sits relative to the competition in today's market, and I guess the question would be, is it still relevant in 2024? And again, we're literally just days away from 2025, which sounds really weird to say, but there's no question that things have certainly changed in the last 2 years with new releases like the Civica P2 Pro, the Ananda Nano, which actually cost quite a bit less, but the 109 Pros are, in my opinion, clearly a step up from those in terms of both tuning and technical performance. And I was actually comparing this with some of my more expensive sets, again, like the Aria Stealths, and I will say I do prefer the Aria Stealth over the 109 Pro in both terms of its tuning and technical performance, although the 109 Pro does offer a more dynamic presentation. Now, I also compared the 109 Pro with my HD 800S, and again, while I was really impressed by its technical performance, it's not quite to the levels of the HD 800S. But again, really what I'm trying to determine is if the 109 Pro is still relevant in today's market. And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is absolutely yes. And it's not just relevant, I would even say I consider this to be competitive depending on your tuning preference. And in my opinion, it comfortably sits as a very impressive and more than competent set within this $800 price range. Not to mention the build quality is excellent, and it's still one of the most beautiful headphones I've seen under $1,000. And with the 20% discount, it's an absolute no-brainer in my opinion. Again, just don't forget to use the discount code in the description. So that does it for this review. If you are new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our content, please take a second and hit that subscription button. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll be sure and leave a link in the description. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please comment on this video, please share this video, please like this video. I hope you have an awesome day.